Hey everybody, I'm Lori Brudeman, and this is Punk Rock HR. In each episode, we take a realistic but slightly cynical approach to fixing work, bringing you raw and honest conversations with disruptors, innovators, and even random working people like you and me with one goal: to reshape the workplace as you know it. But sometimes we take a break from all that and talk about real life, like relationships and well-being and kids and animals. And along the way, we drop a few F-bombs too. Whether you're an HR professional trying to do the right thing, a leader looking to connect with their people, or just fascinated by workplace dynamics, this is your destination to fix work once and for all. My guest this week is Pat Wadors. You may know her as a CHRO at companies like LinkedIn and UKG, but she also has a new book coming out, and that's what we're going to talk about today: her history in the world of human resources, as well as her journey to becoming an author. What has she learned? What is she trying to teach us? What does she want HR to do to aid and fix the future of work? Well, we're covering it all, and I'm so excited to welcome her as a guest on this week's Punk Rock HR. Hey, Pat, welcome to Punk Rock HR.
Hi, excited to be here.
Well, I'm so pleased to have you here. Listen, it's been a long time coming. You are an esteemed figure in the world of human resources. But before we get started talking about you and your career and your new book, why don't you just briefly tell everybody who you are and what you're all about?
All right. Oh, my name is Pat Wadors. Who I am, I'm a mother of three, a grandmother to two amazing grandkids that are 2 years old and 6 months old. So that's been super fun. I'm a wife, I'm a sister, I'm a friend, I'm left-handed, introverted, dyslexic, creative human being.
Well, I mean, that's quite the description. So you are also someone who is really well known in the world of human resources. So, like, what do you do for a living? What's your job?
All things talent. I've known, Lori, that I wanted to be in HR since I was 19 years old. So that was like an amazing compass for me. I figured out I was doing art and other things because school was hard. Being dyslexic made school hard. So I didn't know what path to choose. And when I went to a career center and did a series of tests, so I like this thing called HR, right? I like social work, teaching, HR. And my dad and my uncle, his twin brother, were both in human resources. I interviewed them. And in those conversations, what came out of it was that 80% of a company's operational expense is the cost of talent. And if you can unlock that and navigate it, develop talent, attract talent, motivate them, pay them appropriately, et cetera, you can win in the market. And I wanted to touch all those bells and whistles. And I wanted to sit in this chair, like not just do one discipline. I wanted to sit in this chair, but I wanted to respect the craft. And so what I've done in my career, if any of y'all are interested in looking at my profile, is I have literally gone through the craft and spent time in most of the disciplines, several years in compensation, in recruiting, in employee relations, in HR business partnering, in systems, like you name it, I have done it. And then after I got the craft mechanics, learned how to manage, then I learned how to lead. And I've jumped in and out of HR a couple of times to learn the business. So I've done operations, I've done sales to bring it back into the craft, right? Because we're here to serve the business and make amazing companies healthy. And that's what I do.
Well, that's a pretty thoughtful career path. You know, I learned at the age of 19 that I didn't want to be in HR, but I had an HR internship. So I'm like, oh, snap, like figure out what's next. But I think there's something that unites us all in the world of HR in that we want to fix work. We want to improve work. We believe in people. So can you talk to me about that? Do you feel that way? Is that true for you?
I want to achieve business outcomes and create a healthy workplace for employees so employees can do their best work and feel good about it and walk home fulfilled, right? Like we have more impact on our employees' mental health as managers than our primary doctor. So if I can create a healthy company, great leadership behaviors, and a great employee experience journey map from attracting the right talent, giving them a promise that we're delivering, right? So the brochure matches the reality. I've been in many companies or experienced other stories where that didn't quite match, and that disconnect is hard. And so I think our role is to create high performing companies that are healthy, that employees feel like they are net better off by being there.
Can you name 3 companies that meet that definition?
Yeah, I think LinkedIn achieved it. I think they're amazing, right? ServiceNow started like really harnessing the culture and creating opportunities for development and upskilling. Microsoft comes to mind, UKG. Like if you think about talent and you think about the purpose of talent and you're aware enough about it, you tend to make better decisions. If you overly fixate on a product or a solution without thinking of the humans that actually created that opportunity, you're going to have a mismatch. You're going to have a missed opportunity.
Yeah, yeah. The reason why I ask is because years ago when I worked in human resources and decided to make the jump out, I thought I couldn't affect change and do those really noble things that you talked about from within. It was very challenging. Sometimes it's very difficult to fix a system from within because you're constrained by hierarchy and your own paycheck and your own personal incentives, right? So I thought, well, I'm going to jump out and try to fix the world of work that way and try to create amazing employee experiences that also help companies meet business goals. And one of the women I met in that very early part of my journey was Libby Sartain. Do you know Libby?
Yes.
Yeah,
I worked
Libby's.
for Libby at
You did
Yahoo.
work with Libby. You
Yes.
did. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so Libby was really kind of a role model for me in that way. But I also remember saying to her, well, if you could have fixed work, you would have already done it. And I regret those words to this day. But there is something really interesting about the fact that HR professionals and HR leaders are tackling the same problems in 2024 that they were in 1995 when I first started working in HR. So, can you speak to me about this journey that HR is always on to meet the business where it is, but also to help elevate the business, to create wonderful employee experiences in a world where diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging are now under fire, right? We are fighting the same problems we were at the very beginning of my career and also at the midpoint when I left. So what's your response to that? What's your take on that?
Hi, I'm Cole Napper, host of Directionally Correct, the #1 people analytics podcast in the world. Come check out our podcast that dives deep into topics like people analytics, workforce planning, and talent intelligence, helping leaders across the globe navigate the future of work with insight and a little bit of fun.
Great questions. My observation is that there's a life cycle to every company, every industry, and it creates dynamics in that company. Different generations come into that organization. Culture shift in the same company. If you have a company that's in high growth or high change, and you've hired leaders at a greater pace than the company's growth, say you're hiring leaders, 30% new leadership, that culture will shift and it'll shift really rapidly. You've achieved a tipping point. And so you might have created a really healthy culture with the prior leadership team and the prior way in which to do work. And this new team is looking at it differently. And then you're going to go through growing pains and a shift. Did we really solve the right problem, or we solved this problem but created 2 other problems over here? It's like touching a balloon. You're going to create a different thing. If you take something too far, you're going to have unintended consequences. I believe everything has balance and it has a point in time. Think about org design, Lori. Let's use HR examples. If a muscle is broken in a function, the theory, the hypothesis that you centralize that function, so you build the rigor, the discipline, the training around that function, you get the guiding principles, the mission, vision right, you get the team aligned better to the company, and then you can distribute that function better, embed it more in the business because they have that DNA in them. If you distribute that function too early, they become more directed by that business they are in versus what they were trained to do, right? So there's a maturity curve in all of this. So I think some of the things that we keep repeating is just the natural tension of building, driving business. It's just normal life change. If you read Hoffman's book about blitz scaling, there's a natural evolution of when you focus on culture, and you should do it sooner and sooner, is his lessons learned. But culture sometimes shift. Leadership needs to shift depending on the maturity curve and where you are in the stage of the company. Because leaders that take you to 100 million may not be the same leader and or culture that you need to take a 5 billion company to a 10 billion company. It's a different kind of company. And I think employees tend to hold on. If they're long legacy employees, they want to hold on to what they had, not where would they need to go to. And that's some of the tension that we feel. On DEI, it's society, right? Like you've had swung the pendulum a lot. But the core essence that I believe in as a leader is that inclusion and belonging unlocks diverse points of view, and we create better outcomes with that debate. That's a fact. It's a fact. And so if you stay to the fact, the objective of building great companies, then having a lot of debate, like measuring twice to cut once, just makes common sense. And I think we get lost into what is the quota or what is that? And then you fixate on a given data point and you miss the bigger picture of building an outstanding company or product or service for the world.
Yeah. I take all of those points and they're all very valid. I think one of the things that I struggle with, just being a person, is the human cost of all of these organizational mistakes or course corrections or growing pains, that word you used. One organization's growing pain is another person's life-altering event. And I think this is the natural tension in capitalism and in the world that we live in. But it doesn't mean that we shouldn't strive to do better. And I think for me, that was the struggle, both working in human resources and also now commenting on it, trying to center the human in all of these really difficult discussions is still sometimes challenging. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I continue to learn. I'm a student, and change is hard for all of us. Change gets easier if you understand the context for it, the objective for it. You have some choice in the change, so you have some ownership to the direction that you personally take. All of that helps your mental health. If you feel out of control and you're stuck, then that anxiety is way high. I get that. And so as change leaders, you have to set the groundwork. You have to bring people along the journey. But every time I've been thrown into a change, into an organization that was being acquired, that was merging, that like you went stage left, I really love stage right, like all those things have a visceral reaction to this thing, right? My passion point. Once I pause, ask more questions, seek to understand, then I have a choice which door I walk into. Do I stay in the door frame that I'm in today and continue to walk down that hallway with everyone else, or do I walk out and change to another path? That ownership of myself makes it so much easier. That's one from a human level. The second thing from an HR level is that change makes us stronger, more agile. We learn more. Every change I've gone through, I can reflect on, like, I made that mistake. I've learned from this. I've learned from you. Like, if we don't change, we're stagnated and we lose.
Yeah, I like that a lot. You've been through changes in your career. You've seen companies in high growth. You've seen companies go through CEO transitions. And I just wonder, do you have a lesson, recent or early career, of something you went through and you're like, oh, I'm going to learn from this and I'm going to grow and I'm going to take whatever lesson to the next part of my life, the next phase of my life, and do better? Do you have an example of that?
Hi, I'm Carmen Hudson. I'm the host of the Recruiting Book Club, and we're starting our second season. I'm so excited to bring to you another set of guests of recruiters who have written books. We are excited to have some very special guests this season. We've got Shally, we've got Craig Fisher, James Ellis, and quite a few other people that we're going to bring on board to tell us about what they wrote, why they wrote it, and maybe we'll veer off into a conversation about recruiting on all types of topics and subjects that happen in our industry. So I hope you can join us. I'm excited.
The Use Case Podcast is where technology vendors get to talk about themselves. And it's a wonderful place for vendors, investors, and practitioners to listen to the story of the solution, the features, the benefits, the attributes, etc. And we get to know the CEO or founder during the call, and we also get to know the tech. So subscribe to the Use Case Podcast.
Oh, yeah, I sure do. I remember when early in my career, I was with a company called Medco, pharmaceutical benefit plan company. And I was their employee relations kind of manager, general manager. I was their recruiter, and we just got acquired by Merck. And so my first acquisition, I was helping them do the acquisition, and I got anxious because Merck is huge, Medco's small, right? And I had this like amazing career already. I got to rotate jobs. Like when you're in the big machine, well, I slow down, right? And one of the leaders, I think it was the CFO, said, "You choose your path. Like get your clarity that you need so you can go in every day energized." I'm like, all right, cool. And I went to the head of sales, and I was all of 28 years old. I said, and he had no idea who I was, truly. And I said, "Look, I'd like to get into sales. And I want to understand how you run the business. I've done HR now for all of 6 years, 7 years, whatever wisdom I had." And then I'm like, I want to learn the business. I want to understand the cycle of the quarter. And when we were doing this acquisition, when we were being acquired, like that was a big focus for Merck, and I want to understand it. And he treated me like I was his child almost, like, because I was so young and green. And he was like, "That's nice. Be sure, like, do you really want to switch your career?" And I said, "I didn't say I was switching my career. I said I wanted to learn new things." And he said, "Well, think about it. And after you've given it some thought, come back." And he kind of like put me away. And the very next morning, I show up again in his office before 8 a.m. because I didn't want to be bumped. I'm like, "I'm here again. I still want to do sales." And he said, "Well, why? You failed the first test. You didn't tell me why, what's in it for me." And I said, "Oh, I thought it was obvious. Through this acquisition diligence, what I learned is that you sell to doctors. And now with this mail order pharmacy benefit plan, you're going to sell to HR geeks like me. You need to know how to talk to me, and you don't. So I will translate for you, and you will translate for me." And he goes, "Deal." And what I learned from that, and like within 48 hours, I'd moved from Jersey to LA and did sales and account management for a couple of years and then went back to HR. But what I learned from that is even when I was scared about that acquisition, having some level of control and curiosity about what I can learn, what I can garner for myself and for my career and help others was like energizing. So every time I've had this spot, like I've been acquired, like when Microsoft acquired LinkedIn, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, what's going to happen?" And Lori, I still take so many life lessons to this day from Satya and Kathleen Hogan. Like the growth mindset, like how they do things. And like he changed the culture of Microsoft in such a human way. Like I'm a fangirl. And I'm like, I wouldn't have known that if we weren't acquired. And I was scared. That was huge for me. My life had changed, but I learned so much and I got so much out of it.
Well, I love your story because it also shows the benefit of taking a risk. I mean, not every risk has to be insane and not every risk has to be just totally provocative. Sometimes you can take these risks within your career that are smart, that are planned, and they really pay big dividends. But you know what I learned from your story? Is that every CFO story, man, they all need coaches. you know? That is one truth in my life that never goes away. So the CFO could always use a communications coach. Well, listen, I want to talk about your new book because this is something really important in the marketplace. You've written an amazing new book. Can you tell us about it? What's it called and what's it all about?
It's called Unlocking Your Leadership Story, and it's helping you motivate yourself and teams. And I leverage fables and folktales.
So wait, I want to interrupt you because many people in my audience know fables and folktales through their children and their children's work. Why did you pick fables and folktales as your medium to tell stories?
For the very point you just said, everyone knows them. It's the moral of the story. If you think about Goldilocks and the Three Bears, probably 2 decades ago, I started coaching others and myself to own my career. But I didn't know what my just right fit was, both on the company, the industry, the skills, where are my superpowers. And I learned that having a bad manager is just as important as a learning experience as a great one. I learned that I didn't like to live in spreadsheets all day long. I learned that I loved, employee relations and caring for an employee, but maybe not a certain aspect of it. And my just right fit was Goldie. And so when I teach others, like, channel your inner Goldilocks, or the three pigs, like, you're going to have to set a long-term goal. If you really have a vision of what will take care of yourself and your family and your life and how you want to live your best life, sometimes you got to let go of immediate satisfaction and like invest for your future. Like, these small steps matter. Like, one of the oldest pig built this house of bricks and saved his brothers and created an amazing life and taught them how and became a mentor. So I've modified the fables and folktales a little bit to be the more modern moral of the story. But this is how I coach and teach, because I'm neurodiverse and I think in pictures. And a good friend of mine illustrated the book for me, Darren Caddis. So
That's wonderful. I'm curious as to why a book and why now. I mean, you've been through a lot of change in the past couple of years. You were formerly at a company called UKG that went through a CEO transition and had some layoffs, and you yourself are new in a new role. So why a book and why now?
question. So it happened by chance last year. I'd been asked a couple of times to write, or have I thought about writing? And I found joy in writing on LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. I'm a huge fan. But being dyslexic, I never thought that writing a book was in my future. It was like this thing away from me. And when Wiley Publishing approached me last summer, they were like, would you write a book about HR? I'm like, no. And I'm like, HR is so varied and so I'm humble enough to know that I don't know everything in this craft, and there's some amazing HR leaders everywhere, and I don't want to be perceived as knowing all those answers. So no, thank you on the HR book.
Yeah. And by the way, nobody wants to read another HR book. They want to read something fun and with personality. So good instinct on that. I appreciate that. So Wiley approaches you and they're like, would you write this book? And you're like, maybe not, but you move forward.
Yeah. So they said, well, to their credit, they go, what would you write about? And I go, no one ever asked me that. And I spent probably 7 weeks thinking about it. And I said, if I could codify my life journey, my lessons learned, and the way I've learned them and the way I teach them using fables and folktales, I would be down with that. That would be a fun journey for me, because this is how I lead and how I live my life. And I wrote my outline, and I said I didn't start writing until I was 50. So like this is courage for me. This is scary for me. And I proposed it back to the editors, and they read it and they came back like, we want this book. And I'm like, really? I'm like, this is so cool. And it came so free. It was like, it flowed. Like, I'd be on the airplane and I'd like write a chapter about the elephant and the blind men. I'm like, oh, I have a chapter about the crow and the pebbles. And I have Mulan, and I have like the frog. And like, these are these characters in my life that have been my guideposts, my compass, my cohort in crime, if you will. And I'm sharing it now in this book.
Amazing. Wait, before we start to wrap things up, I want to know about the elephant and the blind men. I'm not sure I know that parable or fable or fairy tale. So what is it and what do you write about?
Hey, we're the payroll baddies, and our mission is to make payroll fun and relatable.
And call out industry when we hear it.
You got to call it out. You got to call it like you see it. But we also got to shine a light on all those unsung payroll heroes out there, making sure we get paid.
Yeah, those are the real payroll baddies out there, and we love sharing their stories and showing them love.
With gold chain and everything, baby.
By the way, SAP is the best payroll out there, and if you don't like it,
get out.
So the story goes like this. There's an elephant that comes into a village, and in that village, there were 5 blind men. And so the owner of the elephant asked them to touch what was in front of them and describe it. What do they think it is? And so they went individually to this mass and they started touching it. And one said, oh, it's a tree trunk. And the other one said, it's a sail. And the other one said it was a snake because he had the tail. And one said it was a barrel. And they were like arguing. They started to argue. And this argument started getting louder and louder. And this one gentleman that was touching the trunk said, well, why do you think it's a snake? And then he described what he was feeling. He goes, well, why do you think it's XYZ? And then the next gentleman was talking and asked questions and questions. And they realized that it was an elephant. They were only touching a part. And so for me, the moral of the story, so I repeat the fable, and the moral of the story is perspective. Your question is your best tool in life, not what you think you know. You share what you think you know, and then you ask questions on why you think differently. And that diversity of perspective makes us stronger and better and wiser, more humble. And so I start the book with the elephant.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that with me. Maybe I've heard it. I mean, I don't know. I'm 50 years old myself and like these stories come and go, but thank you for sharing that because I think it's really interesting. It's not only your question is most powerful. I think when I hear that story, boy, a question makes you more interesting. A question gives you the opportunity to just go in a direction you least expect it. And in that way, I don't know, a question to your point in human resources can be the beginning of something you never even expect.
Yes, exactly. You got the moral of the lesson.
All right. I'm a fan of the book already. So if there's another lesson from the book that you think just exemplifies the world of human resources, one that you absolutely want people to know, why don't you leave us with that story?
I end with Mulan. Her story has been around 1600 years. And it is about leveraging a team with different skills and embracing their uniqueness. It's about learning to embrace your authenticity when she didn't start that way because society did not accept women. And once they not only accepted her superpowers and the fact that she was a female, she ended up saving the country. And her team was so loyal to her because of the way she led and exemplified leadership. So Mulan, I end with Mulan because that's my goalpost. I think that's pretty amazing to be that person. And I think from an HR leadership perspective, if we can create leaders that do that, that would be magical.
Yeah, I like that you end with that. You know, my initial reaction though is how many of us are Mulan? How many of us have ever worked for Mulan, right? No, I think most of our stories at work are stories of hiccups or conflict or disagreements, or maybe you come together for a short time, then things fall apart. So while I love the idea of Mulan, and Mulan is the goalpost, is Mulan realistic?
Well, she struggled, if you recall. She was sent, like the real story of Mulan, not the Disney one, but the real story, like she gets sent home, right? She gets banned from the army. But when the Huns came and they needed her, she came back as her authentic self. And so I think everything in time, I was not my authentic self for probably the first third of my career. And it's through those hiccups and those scars that I have that I've learned to laugh more, smile more, and pursue that. I think people feel authenticity. They see it, they know it, and they trust it. And I'm imperfect, but I think if you are authentic and you're on that journey, people will support you more and it'll be better.
I like that a lot. What a lovely way to end our conversation today. Well, listen, I hope everybody goes out there and buys this book. Where can they find it?
Amazon, Barnes and Noble. It's out officially on the 29th. But I got to touch and feel it yesterday, Lori. I went to an event and they got a bulk order and it made me cry. I just can't believe I actually wrote a book. I am just overwhelmed with just the emotions of it all.
Oh my goodness. Well, listen, I'm so pleased to host you today. Thanks again for being a guest on Punk Rock HR. And we'll make sure everybody has a link to the book and a link to your website in the show notes. Thanks again for chatting with me today.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the conversation.
Hey, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Punk Rock HR. Show notes and more can be found on punkrockhr.com. This episode was expertly produced by Emerald City Productions, and we would all appreciate it if you left us a 5-star review. So go to wherever you stream your podcasts like Apple or Spotify or iHeartRadio and leave that 5-star review and your thoughts on the episodes themselves. Now, that's all for today, and I really hope you enjoyed it. We will catch you next time on Punk Rock HR.